Hey, welcome to Funding Fridays with Beacon Consulting. I am Teresa Collins. Beacon, our mission is guiding nonprofits towards long-term financial sustainability. Every Friday, I try to give you a little piece of information to help out with nonprofits, something typically to do with the resource development planning. So today, since we are verging on the end of the year, I'm going to talk about budget planning a little bit. I've talked about it in the past, but kind of in a different way today. I just watched a webinar and was reminded of all of these really great techniques with putting your budget together and budgets at different levels. So nonprofit budgets are very, very different from for-profit and corporate budgets because we focus on in-kind contributions and donations and different things like that with revenue streams, grants and things like that, whereas for-profits don't have to build their budgets in that way. And a lot of the time, the core value of a budget for a nonprofit is to utilizing grants. So we have different levels of budgets. We have our largest level, our organizational budget, which is the budget as a whole, the entire organization, everything coming in and going out financially for that organization. We also have project budget. Oh, so the largest budget, we call that operating budget. That's your operating budget. And then we have your project budget. So you think of your operating budget as the whole organization. Your program budgets are the different programs within your organizations. And the third level is project budget. So we have our organizational budget, our program budgets, and our project budgets within each program, depending on how your organization is laid out. I think that when putting a budget together, it's best to start at the bottom of that level and to start talking about your different projects that are going on. So go to the program managers and talk about all of those different projects that they have going on. Maybe every project is going to require some level of funding somewhere along the line. So start with them, ask them to put together some project budgets for the projects, all of the projects that they're working on and plan to work on. And then put those together in your program budget will encompass all of the projects going on, plus anything else in your program outside of those projects that are operating. And then you're going to have your program budget. So at this level, at this point, we know every dollar that this specific program within our organization costs us. So this program is going to cost us this amount of money, and we count everything in there. We count our space costs, we count all of our different projects, we count our materials, our supplies, everything. We need all of these things, everything that the program costs to run, we're going to count that very importantly, as well as volunteer and in-kind time spent and contributions. We'll talk a little bit more about that in a minute because it's so important. And then all of your programs, right, can send their budgets up to the bigger organization budget. And then we add anything else in that we need to operationally that does not have to do specifically with our program budgets. It wasn't already covered in our program budgets. And we've got our operational budget. So you want to end up with an operational budget, a budget for each of your programs, and budgets for each of your projects going on within your programs. However that looks for your organization, you adapt it in any way that you need to. And the purpose for this is that oftentimes when we seek out funders, we seek them out for one particular reason, to fund one particular thing. So to be able to produce a budget for that one particular thing to that funder, we want to be grant ready in that way where we can do that right away upon request. Besides that, I think the most important thing, there are two very important things that you absolutely cannot leave out of your budgets, and that most often do get left out of budgets or at least not accounted for accurately. And the first thing is your volunteer time. So it is so important. Accountants fight me on this all the time. Accountants who are not accustomed to putting together nonprofit budgets, that they're accustomed to putting together for-profit budgets, they really just can't work into their beautiful accountant minds that I don't have, the fact that we need to account for in-kind contributions, so non-monetary contributions, and volunteer hours. Volunteer hours and time absolutely needs to exist at every level of our budgeting process. We cannot ignore volunteer time. So it used to be, I think years ago, we would just account for volunteer time with a standard $15 an hour. That's what the value of the time is. To my accountants out there, don't worry. When we account for volunteer time, we do assign a monetary value to it, but we assign it both on the revenue side and on the expenses side. So it goes in and it comes out and it ends up as $0. So will not throw your budget off. And it's still in there on both sides of your budget, on your revenues and expenses. So it goes on and it comes off. And it's so important for us to account for that on the budget, because when we turn these budgets over to our potential funders and say we're asking for staff or salary, we want to show, look, we are already contributing tens of thousands of dollars in kind volunteer services. And we need paid staff for this as well, possibly, depending on your organization. It's just a very good argument to ask for salary when you can also show the in-kind contributions and assign a dollar value to that. Here's how you get to that dollar value. So I mentioned it used to be $15 an hour. That's what industry standard was that we just used across the board. We've come to get a little more sophisticated in our calculating of volunteer hours. So the new kind of national average for the independent sector is $24.69 per hour for volunteer labor, to value volunteer time. So again, the independent sector national average is $24.69 per hour. Do we use it on our budget? Preferably not. I think that's what we would use if we have nothing else that we can think of to use. Here's your alternative, and the better alternative is you go to your Bureau of Labor Statistics website. You go to your occupational labor statistics, bookmark that page, and look up the occupation that most closely matches what your volunteers are doing. And you find that and you can use that for your hourly wage for volunteer time, to value volunteer time. Much of the time, that hourly wage will be much greater than $24.69 an hour. I know that sounds like a big number, but that is just taking into consideration all of your payroll and employee costs and expenses associated with having an employee. So taxes, benefits, all of those things, that's where that average comes in. So it's not that that's their actual hourly wage, but that's the cost of having that employee and what that costs the organization. So again, $24.69 an hour is what you can use as kind of a default volunteer hourly rate. However, if you go to that Bureau of Labor Statistics and the Occupational Labor Statistics site and you look up the industry or the job title that volunteer is most closely doing, you can get a much more accurate value for that volunteer, and it's most likely going to be higher than that $24.69 amount. So do that and account for every hour of your volunteer's time. That's important work that they're doing, and it's important to the organization, and you really have to see it on your budgets, especially in your budgets that you're turning over to donors. You really need to get accustomed to accounting for that volunteer time. Of course, it doesn't cost us real dollars that have to come in from a donor, that kind of thing, but we do need to account for that. It's coming in and it's going out. Okay, and the second thing that you really cannot overlook is space costs. So just make sure that if you are, even say you are holding your, the example that was used in the webinar is you're holding play practices at a local high school, and the high school is giving you the space costs. They're not charging you anything for it, for your organization. Say it's a youth group or something like that. You need to assign an actual value to that as an in-kind value for that space cost. Or maybe they're charging you, say, $30 an hour But don't stop there. Don't just put $30 an hour is what it costs us to rent this space for our rehearsals. Instead, you can use the full amount of what that space is valued at. So maybe typically, if it wasn't for you being a youth group that this high school supports to the outside public, they would rent this out at $100 an hour rather than $30 an hour. So you're going to give that a value of $100 an hour, and then you're going to show that you are only paying $30 an hour, so you're showing an in-kind contribution amount of $70 an hour. So you see how that ups our numbers and really shows the contributions that we are working so hard to get. So as we're thinking budget, that's really all I'm going to cover today because budgets get so complex and every piece of the budget could be its own, seminar. So there's lots out there. Make sure you brush up on your budgets. And I highly recommend if you're going to have a budget committee meeting to plan your budgets for the next fiscal year, if your fiscal year is a calendar year, have them watch a budget seminar or webinar prior to attending the budget meeting. Then you guys are all on the same page and you're all focused on the same things and operating with the same set of rules. And you have that additional education with the whole team so no one feels left out. So everyone has something to contribute to those budget meetings. Goodness, if you can get as many people as you can from your board to your budget committee meetings to help work on that, especially program people, the more the merrier, but let's make sure that they're all trained in the same way. So it's very helpful to just show a quick 1-hour webinar to get everyone on the same page. That is all I have for you today for Funding Friday. Please join us on Wednesdays at noon for Webinar Wednesdays here at Beacon. If you are local, we're at 814 Washington Street in Manitowoc, Wisconsin, right across the street from the courthouse here in Manitowoc. It's free professional development, eligible for continuing education credits. Bring your lunch if you'd like to. Here at Beacon every Wednesday at noon, and they always have to do with a resource development topic, so grant writing, budgeting, board development, that kind of thing. And you get to sit and chat with your colleagues. So hopefully we'll see you Wednesday, or we will see you next week on Funding Fridays. Thank you.